Hi, I'm Dawn Klein, Assistant Dean in the School of Business at Ithaca College. We're really excited that you're considering the Ithaca College School of Business for your college career, but we're also very sad that we're not going to get a chance to meet you here on campus this spring. What we've done is put together a series of videos from our deans, students, faculty, and even some alumni to talk about what they're doing here in the school and the things that they think make the School of Business at Ithaca College unique. We'll kick off with a welcome from our dean, including some information about our programs and our approach to undergraduate business education, the kind of thing you would have gotten if you'd come for an accepted student stay here on campus. We also have a virtual tour of our building led by one of our very own student marketing managers, Rachel Cadet. We also have a series of 1-minute videos that give you a chance to meet some of our students, faculty, and alumni. You'll see pretty quickly that none of these were professionally done. Some of our faculty and students are super outgoing and comfortable in front of the camera, some a little bit less so. But it'll give you a chance to meet us, some of our pets, and get a feel for who we are and what we do. We hope you enjoy. We hope you subscribe. We'll be adding videos over the next few weeks. And we also hope that you reach out to us. Any of us are available to talk via email, phone, or a face-to-face Zoom session. Again, we're excited that you're considering the School of Business, and anything we can do to help make your decision easier or get you connected with people that you'd like to get to know, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, and hopefully we'll see you on campus in the fall.